I'm Nathan Olivarez-Giles, technology reporter for the Los Angeles Times, here with Michael Hiltzik, LA Times columnist. And the big news of the week, of course, is the death of Steve Jobs, who passed away at 56 years old on Wednesday. Jobs, of course, was Apple's co-founder with Steve Wozniak, longtime CEO, and most recently, the chairman of the board after he stepped down in August, and Tim Cook officially took over as CEO. So one of the things, of course, that is going to be on people's minds, given this news, is where does Apple go from here? What does the loss of Steve Jobs mean for Apple?
Well, I think it's going to be probably a couple of years before we really know. Some of the smartest technologists who I've ever met always said that it's hard to look ahead more than 2 years at the future in technology because things change so fast and so unexpectedly. So there are undoubtedly a lot of products in the pipeline, new iterations of old products that were developed under Jobs or while Jobs was overseeing all of these other executives. The question is going to be, how does Apple really manage the unexpected changes that are undoubtedly in all of our futures?
So, of course, the iPhone 4S is the most recent Apple product launch, and that was Tim Cook's first solo launch without Steve Jobs there. A lot of people have said it was a success, and a lot of people have said it was a flat-out disappointment because it wasn't a whole new revolutionary product with a new form factor.
Well, a lot of the disappointment, to the extent there was disappointment in the introduction of the iPhone 4S, was the result of the great expectations that had been built up. The expectation that there was going to be a whole new iteration, an iPhone 5. Now, those weren't expectations that Apple built up. Those were expectations built up by followers of Apple, by the websites, by the commentators that surround Apple like a cloud of bees these days. So I don't think we can blame Tim Cook for what I think most people think was sort of a flat presentation. The question that we'll never be able to answer really is that if it were Steve Jobs who was up on that stage in Cupertino the other day, and he had the same product, would there have been a different reception to it? But I think we can look back in the past. We all think of the great introductions that Steve Jobs was responsible for, where it really was something revolutionary, but we tend to forget some of the in-between introductions when all he really had was something a little bit more, and there were, at least for a few days or weeks, yawns across the punditocracy.
So one of Apple's biggest assets, a lot of people would say, would be their executive team. Jonathan Ive with design, Scott Forstall with software, Philip Schiller with marketing. Do they stick around? Was there really a shared vision there, or does that dissipate as Jobs is gone?
Well, the internal dynamics of a management team are always very subtle. And in the past, of course, everybody reported to Steve Jobs. He was the hub of all of this management activity. Now, he didn't keep everybody around either. It wasn't very long ago that Apple lost the chief of its retail division, the creator of those great Apple stores, who went to of all places, JCPenney. Now, it is a good question as to whether all of these people who all worked for Steve Jobs are going to be happy working for Tim Cook, whether Tim Cook is going to have the management ability, and it's going to take a lot of ability to keep that team together. And one of the problems I think that Cook is going to face is that everybody out there is going to be looking for his failures.
Yes.
Right? They're going to be looking at proof that he is not Steve Jobs or that Apple has changed. So the challenge may be even greater for him. And as I said, we're not really going to know for a year, 2 years, maybe 4 years whether he succeeded.
So, as much as possible, it seems to me as though Steve Jobs is almost a rock star CEO, and the way people are treating him in his death is more akin to a rock star or a famous actor. What do you think about that?
I think that's certainly true. That's the way that he's been treated. It's fair in a sense that Apple's greatest years of success, these last 10 years or last 15 years, really were closely associated with Jobs' return in 1996. And there doesn't seem to be much doubt or reason for doubt that it's his aesthetic, his demands, his sense of manufacturing and marketing that really had a lot to do with Apple. So yes, he's been treated as a rock star, but it's fair to say that it was a deserved treatment.